And now it's time for rants. And normally, well, actually, I shouldn't say normally. For the last couple of weeks, I've been dominating this shit. No, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty much a give and take with me and Kyle doing most of them. That means Jeff and Felicia, you guys are on deck. You guys need to write some shit. Spend some time. Anyway, Kyle's got the rant for us tonight, and I'm going to cede the floor to him. So, Kyle, take it away.
Okay. Well, first, this is not a fun one.
No, this is going to be painful.
this is going to be painful. It's less of a rant and more of a vent. Because 2016 has not exactly been a great or easy year for anybody, but for it's been a rough one for me, and my entire family. I'm certainly not sharing this one alone. And I haven't really. We've kind of skirted around it because we didn't want to drag the show down, or I didn't want to drag the show down by talking too much about my dad and everything that happened over those months. So yeah, we glossed over it a bit. So I'm gonna vent. I'm gonna do some good solid venting about that. Kind of because I have to. So next week would have been my dad's 64th birthday. So yeah, just before Christmas, and that's a nice reminder, a good gut punch for the holidays.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of tell you the story of this year. So started in the tail end of March. March 31st. That was the last day that I saw my father outside of a hospital bed. He spent the 31st. He spent that day exploring the construction that was going on in my brother's house. If you're interested, he was getting his house leveled, so they dug big holes on the foundation and jacked. It's pretty cool.
It's a neat process.
But it is a neat process. My dad was in construction. He was a contractor his whole life, so that kind of stuff that got him going. So he spent the day there. He also helped watch or babysit his granddaughter, kind of hang out there. But he wasn't doing well, which is why he was going in for heart and lung surgery. But at that time, he was tethered to oxygen tanks, and he kind of got worn out pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
But that night, we were me and my family were supposed to go out to dinner with him and my mom. They were kind of taking turns going out to a decent dinner with all of us, with all their kids, with my siblings, kind of one at a time.
Yeah. Before
he went into the hospital. And because my schedule's crazy, I wound up being the last. I've only got 3 siblings, so it's not exactly like it was a, long, big list. But so I was last on the list just before. It's like the day before he was going to the hospital. So we were supposed to go to dinner. But because he was helping with his granddaughter, because he was watching that, he got too worn out, and couldn't. It just didn't work out. So he wound up, eating his last, what turned into his last meal. It was a drive-through that he ate in the car.
Oh no!
And then he stopped over at my house. So pulled into the driveway so we could say hey before he went to the hospital. He came up, said he was sorry for being tired, but had to go home, go to sleep. So I got a chance to talk, give him a hug through the car window because he couldn't get out of the car at that point. So we're both kind of pretending that there's nothing wrong. This is fine. Everything's no problem. At this point in time, I had just been appointed to the board for the Atheists of Utah. So I kind of got to tell him about that. It was one of those things. He just kind of said, "Well, good job," and then he kind of made some joke about lumber. There was a board joke in there. That was my dad. He could make some terrible puns about anything. He also seemed to think the idea of organized atheism. He thought that was a little funny.
Yeah.
The idea of us having meetings. He thought that was funny. So we joked, but he did, tell me he was proud of me for doing that. I told him to make sure he told the surgeon to keep it under a C cup. Because he has a bad back and he'd look ridiculous with anything bigger. So, but that was, so we kind of ended on a joke about him getting tits. So that was fun. And then the next day I, go to work and checking my phone every 10, 15 minutes for updates from the hospital. But the surgery went fine. So he got out of surgery, went into his recovery, which is in the cardiac the cardiac wing of the intensive care unit at the hospital. It's where they put everybody who's had any kind of open heart and lung surgery. So, but then a family asked, "Hey, you want to come up to the hospital, see him?" I go, he's just out of surgery. He's still sedated. He's just asleep. So, no, I've got other stuff to do. So I stayed home for a little bit. Plus, hospitals kind of creep me out a little. It's just,
as they should.
As they should. I'm not a huge fan. They get to me. But so about after a few days, I did go up to the hospital, mostly just to make sure that my mom would eat something. She wouldn't leave. She stayed at the hospital the whole time. So, me and my siblings, we took turns going up, making sure we, dragged her down to the cafeteria or, out away from the hospital for, a few minutes to get something to eat. But that went on about 2 weeks. So the recovery was slower than it should have been, which kind of concerned everybody. But he was improving. Things were going okay. We're heading in the right direction. But about 2 weeks in, he kind of started to backslide. So he got an infection. So he got pneumonia. Not terribly uncommon when patients are intubated.
Yeah.
Especially for a period of time, it just happens. Bacteria gets in there.
Well, but you have a tube that doesn't belong.
Yeah, you have a tube that belongs in there. But a couple rounds of antibiotics and you're okay. But because of the reason he went in was he was operating on basically 1/4 of one lung. He had like no lung function, so that was to get his lungs back up to capacity, and also to do some repair on his heart. Mm-hmm. But they fixed it up and he was back up, but his lungs were also healing. So to get an infection that filled with fluid, he didn't react to that well. I mean, they got the infection under control, but he didn't bounce back the way the doctors wanted to.
Yeah.
But at this point, it had been about 2 weeks. We're all getting discouraged. He's getting discouraged. At this point, he is awake, but he starts to get discouraged, and it was kind of starting to hurt his recovery. So that, and his grandkids, all of our kids, they're not allowed in to see him, and that was probably what's killing him most. He wanted to see the kids. He loved his grandkids. That's actually the reason he opted to do this surgery, because the doctors had basically told him, the way you're going, the way you're deteriorating, you've basically got 1, maybe 1.5 years left. So that kind kind of
puts things in perspective.
puts
Really
things
quickly.
in perspective. He wanted to hang around for the grandkids, so that's why he opted to do this. So what we had done is, you take your phone, you record a little video of them saying hi, and you audio recordings, and we take them in, play them for him, and that would, cheer him up, pick him up for him. A lot of times he was kind of sedated or just coming off sedation, so he didn't quite. You're never quite sure, did he actually hear it or understand? But I went in. I went in one day. This one day I went in. The nurses were just finishing up, getting him cleaned up, changing his IVs, stuff like that. But he's wide awake, and really very much kind of his old self. He still has the intubation tube in, but just out of habit, I walk in, he sees me, I see him, I say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And he kind of looks at me and points to the tube and just kind of goes, this sort of, yeah, I'm okay except for this tube. Hey, that's fine. Just, a tube. But so I talk to him a bit. I play the audio of my kids, telling them they want him to get better.
Yeah.
They miss him, and I'm having a hard time with this in the room and with the nurses there, and I'm not doing too great because it's making me nervous. I hate these rooms and wires and tubes and machines, and kind of can't really give. Yeah, there's tubes everywhere, tubes and wires everywhere. I can't really give him a hug. I squeeze his hand, he squeezes mine, and anxiety was through the roof. So I was in that room maybe 5-10 minutes, and I said, okay, well, I'll get out of here. And it was sort of I'll just get out of here. I'll come back later. Don't worry. I'll come back and say hi before I have to leave. But I didn't. And that was kind of I'm not feeling good. My anxiety is going crazy, and I gotta go take care of something else. But that was April 10th. That was the last time, I really talked to him being another person. He was a human at that point. That I could talk to, and he would respond in some way. But I didn't get back to the hospital until April. It was April 15th when I got a phone call at work, which is very unusual. Because it's hard to get a phone call at work where we work.
Yeah.
But I did. I got a call. So what had happened is the day before, on the 14th, my dad had accidentally self-extubated. But now we don't know. There was absolutely no way for any of us to know whether he had pulled out his breathing tube intentionally, whether it got caught on something, or whether he was I don't know, under sedation, didn't know what he was doing. But we don't know. But the tube didn't come all the way out, so it was just part way out. So at that point in time, the resident doctor or the attending doctor, they had to choose whether to reinsert it, put it the rest of the way back in, or pull it out. They chose to pull it out and put him on a mask. So it was just a couple hours later, and sometime in the night, he aspirated on mucus and lung secretions, and he had stopped breathing. So they went in. They were re-ventilating, re-intubating him to get him breathing again. While they were reintubating him, while they were putting the tube back in, his heart stopped. So he was in full cardiac arrest. His heart had stopped for about 3 or 4 minutes while they were doing chest compressions. They did get his heart started again, just with compressions, and he got breathing again after he was reintubated. So I'd kind of gotten, half of the story on the, well, not even half the story. I got like a quarter of the story before I ran out of work, and the drive from the office to the hospital is just a complete blur. I made it there. I know I left work and got to the hospital. How I got there, I don't know. But these next several days are also just a complete blur. I couldn't tell you, what days things happened. But it was days that are just a blur of me and my family and everybody in a small little room in the hospital. And it's a blur of, tears and rage and hysterical joking. We make the worst gallows humor in this hospital.
Because it's all you got.
That's all we've got. And we meet with the doctors and nurses and hospital administrators, and they're trying to explain what happened and what things mean, what's going on. The meetings were agonizing, sitting there trying not to break down, half of us shaking uncontrollably, and it's just waves of just unfiltered emotions. And you sit there listening to these doctors, they try to tell you what seizures they could mean. What they explain what myoclonic jerking is, which is an indication of significant brain damage. What subclinical seizures are and what they mean to a brain, and is it possible to recover from that? And is this giant unknown country of brains, and we're having neurologists saying, yeah, there's a lot we just don't know, and a lot of it we just kind of have to see. But it's update and news, and none of it's good, and we're in this room, and that's where you get doctors that plant this just toxic seed of hope.
Yeah.
And it festers. It just sits there.
I think most of us we'd be completely happy with, give me the worst outlook and let me be surprised by it, instead of the whole this could happen. Don't give me the full the glass, and give me the half glass. Don't give me the empty glass. Fuck that. Sorry. Don't mean to walk on your rants.
Yeah. No, that's what it is. But you have there's a hope. Okay, great. We're going to go for that, because the alternative is not an alternative at this point. So this just, it festered, and we stood in the hospital room, where there are even more bags and more monitors, and he's laying on a bed, and he's seizing and jerking and twitching, and there's nothing resembling a person there. So we are there for days, and we sit in this sterile room, and we eat in a hospital cafeteria, and half the time we're sitting silently, and we're drinking cup after cup of coffee, and we're watching cup after cup of coffee sit and cool down because we can't drink it anymore. And we have these deep needs to go into rages, and we need to fight, and we just tore after each other for every possible little thing. And we got kind of vicious And there were points in times where I was pretty sure that several of us were getting ready to come to blows, but we stood there and we would leave and come back and leave and come back. And these days stretched to weeks. And so it's weeks of this same thing. And after more weeks, my dad is moved from the hospital intensive care unit to a long-term critical care facility where we can all visit him and stay as long as we need to, and the kids can visit him, and he's got his own room. So we decorate the room. We bring things from home. We decorate the room because he might wake up, and if he wakes up, we want him to see something, but we don't know. And we spend hours there and days there, and we fight and we cry, and we just continue to let these seeds of hope grow, and they become venomous, and we're getting strangled, in each of us in different ways. We bring our kids, and they sit, and I sat and watched my kids read stories. They read books to my dad, who he couldn't respond. He didn't look. I mean, he's just there's nothing there. But every now and then there would be something. His eyes would twitch. He'd blink or he'd yawn, and there's these things that we saw, these little improvements, these things that maybe were kind of coming back, but we saw so many things that just weren't there.
Yeah.
So many things that we wanted to see, things we needed to see. But as it went on and stretched on, the hope just it was gone at so many points. And so at this point, it's May. It's May now, and it's the same thing through May, every day through May, and then June just vanishes. And the meetings that were with physical therapists and nurses, and they were teaching us how to take care of him, and we were learning how to exercise his limbs and make sure he didn't completely atrophy, and trying to work through his brain, maybe kind of learn how to use his body again. And we'd brush his teeth, we would dress him, we took care of all these things, and we would see him cry, and we'd see him look at us, and we saw the things we wanted to see more than anything.
More toxic seeds.
And then July came, and we had more meetings, but we didn't have any more meetings with doctors. We were done with doctors. It was insurance agents and hospice supervisors and just nurse practitioners and social workers and administrators, and the questions of what are we going to do now? What happens next? And we're getting engulfed in this, and we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe he's going to come home, and this is what we have now. So the insurance is now starting to run out, and they're not going to pay for his care anymore. Not without any clinical signs of improvement. And no matter how much you say, but we see improvement, we see things he's getting better. That's not measurable. You can't measure that he looked at you or he blinked.
It's all anecdotal still.
And even that is, how much do you want? How much is it that we just need to see it? Or is that real? So they have to prove that he's getting better. So they have to prove that he's better now in July than he was in April. So they They disconnect him, and at this point, he's not on a ventilator, but he is connected to a trach for assisted breathing. Because he would get tired, so he needs a little bit of help, but it's not breathing for him. It's just an assistant. So they connect him to a portable oxygen tank, and he's breathing on his own. And they load him into an ambulance, and he goes for a short little trip to a hospital just a minute away, and they do full EEGs to just try to measure what's left of his brain and to compare that to what it was.
Yeah.
But the measurements of that EEG were both good and bad, because they measure the activity in his brain, and they tell us that there's no more sign of seizure. There's no more signs of that kind of abnormal. There's no more signs of seizing, but there is also nothing normal. There's no normal brain activity at this point. But what really changed at this point is they're bringing him back into the long-term care facility, and as they're unloading him from the ambulance, he stops breathing.
Jeez.
And they rush him back into his room, and he's just at this point just downstairs from his room, and they reconnect him to the assisted breathing machine and do a couple chest compressions, and he starts breathing again. But at this point, we know there's nothing in the future. His body's giving out. So the question of what might be left in his head, that's no longer a question, because he's done. He's spent. So at that point, it takes another 2 weeks of arguments, and each of us fighting about what the best thing to do is, what we can do, what's the right thing to do. And this is the point where once there's no more argument, once there's no more debate, and it's just a question of picking a date, I walked into his room alone, which is, I think, the first time I had been alone with him, so to speak, for a while. And I talked to him for a minute, and I told him, you can kind of let go. Said it's okay. We can take care of each other. You can go. And I don't even know why I did that, because it certainly wasn't for him. I have no illusions that he could hear me. I don't think there was enough left for him to hear me. So it was me. I was kind of talking to myself there. But we knew what we had to do. We know what we were going to do. And I think part of me wanted him to. I was kind of hoping maybe he could hear, and maybe he would be able to take that choice away from us. That he would kind of give up on his own, so we wouldn't have to do what we needed to.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So on July 20th, we stood in his room, and with my brothers, we got him dressed. we put new clothes on him, and it's kind of silly the things you do. But we bought him some new clothes, and we had to, cut the back off of a shirt to get it on him. But we put him in some, normal clothes. We get him out of his hospital clothes. So we dressed him, and the nurses came in, and they started him on his morphine. So they started the morphine, and we saw him relax, and we sat there listening as one by one each of the monitors and the machines were all switched off, and the room was silent, except for his breathing, except for his slowly lessened, labored breathing. And you sit there for 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and it's the longest stretch of time I've. I don't even have really good words to explain this stretch of time where you're watching, just watching someone slip away, and you sit there and you stare at someone's chest, just wanting so much for it to stop going up and down, but not at the same time. You don't want that to happen, but it's still going to.
Yeah.
But once it did stop, I didn't say anything. I just walked out of the room, didn't look at anybody, didn't talk to anybody, just walked out of the room, and put a nice dent in a stucco wall outside. And then that was on the 20th. And then the next 3 days, I wrote a eulogy and an obituary, and we pick a casket, and you make, again, more gallows humor jokes than I ever thought we would, and all these things you do. And we were, my two brothers, my sister, my mom, we were, for essentially 5 days, day and night, and basically inseparable, just taking care of all of these things. And we got probably the from what the guys at the funeral home say, it's the fastest. We put together a service faster than anything they've ever seen. The service, actually, by the time we had a service, it was the same day. They even managed to get an obituary printed.
Wow.
So that was on July. So that was July 23rd, and his birthday's in a couple days, and even then, it still has been days and weeks full of meetings, and insurance and attorneys, and
more shit
picking out more shit than you care to deal with, and it doesn't go away. It doesn't stop. So that's kind of where I've been, and I'm sorry. I don't mean to break down and kill a show. That's normally a lot of fun.
No, but people need to realize we're people too. We're not just voices that come out of the boxes that they're staring at every day. We're not just news commenters. We're not just that kind of thing. We're people with the same fears as every other people, with the same bullshit that we have to put up with as every other person. We're all alive. We're all afraid of dying. We're all going to die. We're all going to be putting our family, friends, children, grandmas, grandpas, everybody through the same shit. Not the exact same, of course, but
yeah, it's not something, and I it's not something that anybody should ever have to deal with. And
I want my death to be humorous. That's all.
And I hope. I mean, shit. The shit we did. They put together this for the service. They put together the slideshow. Hey, bring all your pictures, and pick some nice songs for the slideshow. And of course, we picked some of his favorite songs, which are not even close to what you would put in any kind of a memorial or slideshow or funeral service. And this little memorial slideshow, we had chosen to end with the theme song to The Great Escape.
Poignant.
and you will never see groups of people watching a video, just people breaking down and crying, and then the theme song to The Great Escape comes on. Watching people go from just broken to laughing uncontrollably because it was bizarre, it was out of place, it was hilarious. So there was something good that came out of it. So I'll put up I can toss a link to that video. I don't know if anybody really wants to see it, but it's fun. It's funny.
So, man, how do we?
Yeah, how do you end from that?
Yeah. So, I
sorry, guys.
I have to
this is also. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This won't happen again. It's one of those things. It happens every now and then. But I vented. Thanks for letting me vent. Everybody who stuck with it. If you stuck with it, I'm sorry. Jeez.